This is the Isle of Man talking, the Mannin Line.
Well, fast am I. Good afternoon. Welcome along to the Mannin Line. Alex sitting in for Andy today and on Monday as well. It's an open line today through until 1 o'clock, which means the floor is yours, as it were, in Radioland. What would you like to talk about? Well, in the news, as we've heard, if you've had to pay for care for yourself or your loved one, how did you manage to raise the money to do it? There's a consultation going out that looks at the way that possibly the state could help. Or do you think it's private individuals that should pay for it? Offshore wind farms. Yeah, we're going to be consulted about them. Also, what happened to the mail plane? Yeah, you might have noticed there was a note through early this morning at 9 o'clock from the Isle of Man Post Office saying that due to the adverse weather, the boat has been unable to sail this morning. Therefore, all mail collected yesterday has not been dispatched. This mail will be dispatched on the next available sailing. Mail for delivery on island today arrived yesterday evening has been processed. However, due to the cancelled sailings, inbound mail will not arrive this evening. However, flights are operating. So I know full well that on the Mannin Line in recent times, people have been talking about the mail plane and the loss of the mail plane. And now, when the boat doesn't go, we don't get mail either. Okay? And this does feed into the ShopRite Tesco story as time goes on as well. It's going to be interesting to see, isn't it, that one of the aspects of the ShopRite business model that was much championed was their local warehouses. So when the boat didn't go, you'd still have food on the shelves. Now, we don't know for sure how it's going to pan out, but the current Tesco business model is those trailers come in early in the morning on the overnight sailing, the Ben McCree, or in the future the Manxman sailing, so you have your shelves stocked. Question is, will that still be the Tesco business model when they've got the remainder of the stores across the island? And if so, when we've got a day like today, when the boat doesn't go, what happens? Okay? Do you stock up on canned food? And is this the kind of place, if that's the case, that really is going to attract people from the UK? Well, it's a case of that, during the winter, when it's a bit windy and a bit rainy, we get short on food. Who knows? I'd love to hear your opinions on all these topics or any more that are in the news. 166 177. Thank you to text of 490. Says, hi, Alex. The Isle of Man seems to be becoming part of the Channel Islands. The gas is the same company. The banks are from Guernsey. The same things that's happened with their post going by boat. Just a shame we don't have the same tourism as they have. Maybe their islands are not as scruffy as ours, and they didn't let things slip beyond repair. That's from Ian. Thank you very much, Ian. There was two ways of thinking during the COVID years, wasn't there? And when it came to visitor attractions and different local authorities, some invested during COVID to make sure that when the visitors returned, they'd return to see an enhanced product. Did we do that? Some would argue not, okay? Whereas at other places, it was a case of you come back after COVID and go, my word, they haven't been looking after this, have they? So maybe that's it. It's a state of mind. It's a thought process. And along the lines of, my favourite soapbox, Douglas Promenade, we had all that snagging list that was very publicly announced by former DOI ministers. If you drive along the prom, you can see it's not been finished. There are things that are wrong. There's paving that's cracked. There's random blue pipes sticking out the ground. There's street lights that are missing with bits of rope hanging out where the street lights should be. And, that the zebra crossings aren't actually black and white all the way across. There's no drains at the side of the zebra crossing, as people will find out today. Is this a state of mind for us here on the Isle of Man? Right. Fran, Alex, thank goodness you're back doing the Mannin Line. Only for 2 days, Fran. Don't put this on to me for too long. It says, now, can I start by saying a big well done to the chair of Isle of Man Post? He's done his best to closing rural low-footfall post offices, Saturday deliveries, and now airmail. No wonder he's known as the Manx hide-and-seek champion. He's never about to answer the electorate, says Fran. Well, thank you for that, Fran. Once again, the chair of Isle of Man Post is listening. You know the phone number, 66 13 68. If you want to make a point, I'll quite happily chat to anybody on air, whether it be public, whether it be politician. If you want to ring in, please do so. This is a platform. Who's texted in here? Oh, this is a WhatsApp. 166 177. Hello to Ray. He says that is the reason at the moment that they have to obliterate the hedges at this time of year. I can understand cutting them back, but in lots of places they've been cut back to the bone, and in doing so, cover for birds are gone. Can the government accept and understand nature is not tidy and trim the back, so don't obliterate the hedges? A totally bewildered John. Well, I suppose the other side of this is, John, that hedges on the side of the roads, there's a safety aspect, isn't there? That if I'm playing devil's advocate, that if you walk up to Manx Radio, there's meant to be a pavement on the land side of the road, and it has been so, just left, quite frankly, that you can't even get onto it now. The hedges are so overgrown that no one can walk on it. In fact, in some places, you'd barely know there's a pavement there at all. So there's an element, I suppose, that you have to keep hedges trimmed back for a safety level, but do we go too far? Or is it a case that we should be doing it, bit by bit as the year goes on? Do let us know your thoughts, 66 13 68, or text 166 177. It wouldn't be a Mannin Line without me getting to speak to Julian. Good afternoon, Julian.
Hi, Alex. I think the global boiling's over for the year.
It's not particularly warm today, I will grant you that one, yes.
No, I suppose on a good note, though, now that the post is going on the boat, which is always way cheaper than doing airmail, we'll look forward to the stamps getting cheaper now, I would imagine.
Once again, I take your cynicism. I don't particularly agree with it. I don't think that's going to happen in any way, shape or form. I think costs only ever go one way, don't they, really?
Well, that's true. Just one quick point and then my main thing. There's a quick mention of a live broadcast today at around 2 to 2:30 on the UK Parliamentary Channel. Andrew Bridgen will be giving a half-hour speech on trends in excess mortality, which he says is the most important speech he's ever given. The Parliamentary Channel is available for free. You can do it on Sky on Channel 504, free views on 232, free sat on 201, BBC iPlayer, or on the Parliament's own worldwide website at parliamentlive.tv.
And for people, and for people who aren't aware, Julian, Andrew Bridgen, he was the MP that was effectively, and I realise I'm summarising this, but he was effectively given a slap on the wrist for what they said was spreading anti-vaccine propaganda within the parliamentary chamber, wasn't he? If I remember rightly.
Yeah, of the 2 or 3 people in the chamber that actually turned up.
Yeah, no, just so people know who we're talking about here, yes.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
So why should people tune in and see this speech this afternoon? What do you think he's going to say in it?
What he's going to do is, I think he's going to look at what's already being shown on the government websites. Interestingly, if anyone looks for a search term called Office of Health Improvement, Excess Mortality, and then the first search that comes up will be the UK government page, Excess Mortality in England and English regions. And then when you get on that page, if you scroll to Documents, click the first one, and then that takes you into the final page, and then you click on Age Group, and then you click on, say, 0 to 24-year-olds.
Crikey, I hope people are noting this down, Julian. Crikey, hold on.
Sorry.
No, so you go on, 0 to 24-year-olds, you were saying.
Yeah, and then you'll notice there are 2 graphs. The upper one indicates excess mortality in that age range, with the 0 horizontal line being normal, and then the pale blue line bars, vertical ones, indicating above normal, and the y-axis, which is the left-hand side vertical, shows you the percentage. So when you follow those bars, you can see what the excess mortality is against your normal 5-year range, which is the 0 line. So it gives you an idea of what Andrew will be talking about. And that's on the UK government site.
So obviously that is something that they've been monitoring. What is he just going to literally talk about the fact that there is excess mortality? What is the point of his talk?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I don't know the detail, but it certainly will be interesting to hear because he does have a molecular biology degree and something in genetics as well. So in his previous incarnation, he was quite. I think he went to the University of Nottingham to do his PhD. So He's not a dummy, I don't think.
So you think because I'm trying to get to the root of why you think, what's the point he's going to make? That obviously that is a fact, as you've said, that the statistics are out on the UK government website. Is he just going to be turning around and doing what you've just done and said, look, we've got excess mortality?
I think what he's doing is, I think he's trying to work out why there is such a large increase and why there doesn't seem to be much publicity on it. I think something like that. But
Okay,
I'll be watching anyway.
What's your
main
what,
thing I was
Ewan?
gonna say was,
I'm just going to say,
several
Ewan,
media outlets-
what's before you go, what's your thought then on the reason that there is excess mortality? Because as you say, he's a scientist, he's a qualified scientist. Science is about finding causality and then effect. So obviously this is the effect. Which road do you think he's going to be going down? Which area of causality? He's got to make that link, hasn't he?
Yeah, he will, and you know what? I think he's kept his cards a little bit close to his chest. So I'm going to wait and just watch and see. I mean, on a day like this, you might as well watch something like that, I suppose. But,
that's a good point. Obviously, you'll have the radio on in the background as well. So, anyway, sorry, Julian. What was your other point you wanted to make?
Yeah, several media outlets, including the BBC's headline yesterday, Isle of Man doctors reject assisted dying proposals. 2/3 of the Isle of Man Medical Society, which works out at 108 members, voted 74% against the assisted dying bill, with 34%, which equates to 37 doctors on the Isle of Man, saying they may leave the island if the assisted dying bill is enabled. These figures, of course, don't take into account the remaining 39% of the medical society who haven't actually said anything yet. But if some of those go along the same lines, it may well be 37 plus, which leaves a bit of a conundrum. Because if you've got 37 plus doctors that might leave the island, that could trigger the collapse of the health service over here, which is already stretched to the limit, as we know, with all the appointments and everything else. So could the legislation of assisted dying bill collapse the health service for everyone else?
It is a good point. I mean, just to bring people in on this, this was a survey conducted by the Isle of Man Medical Society, and as you say, yes, 74% said that gave their opinions on the assisted dying bill, and they were against the proposed changes. So they had 53 submissions as part of the survey. Do you feel that the NHS over here is very reliant on people staying over here, or do you think that our future funding model and staffing model for at Nobles Hospital and the NHS is going to be transient, bringing people in from the UK who want to come here or not, in terms of supporting the NHS?
I personally think it's much better if you have a doctor that gets to know you. You know, they can kind of see your demeanour. If you're in, it's much better if you keep going to the same doctor. If you've constantly got people coming in and out all the time, it doesn't give the same sort of bedside manner, you might say, I suppose. Another thing to consider, which I haven't seen too many people talking about, is something called the Werther effect, which is more often referred to as copycat suicides. And just looking at figures from other jurisdictions that have got assisted suicide regulations and legislation, albeit it's small relative numbers, but it's showing exponential increases in requests for euthanasia based on non-terminal diagnoses like depression, mental illness, and feelings of being a burden, which is worrying considering the decline in mental health following COVID measures and the rising cost of living. So, you've got this sort of, people might think, oh, do you know what, this is available now and he's done it, so I'll do it. So there's that Werther effect. It's based on a 1774 novel of somebody that commits suicide, and then it's seen in the papers, and then there's a whole sort of cluster of people that straight afterwards go and do a copycat thing. So it does make you wonder, if it was legislated to come in, you might have that type of thing. And almost every one of these jurisdictions that have gone down this route, Canada and Belgium and Holland, some of them have. Theo Boer, who was the Netherlands, he was the regulator, and he was one of the guys that drafted the original legislation for it. He's now saying that he regrets it because they're opening up the taps on just about everyone in society. I mean, they even have children being euthanized based on parental consent. So it's kind of that once the primary legislation's in, a few years later, it's certainly the foot's in the door and it's getting cracked wide open, it seems.
Okay, Julian. I had a text in from 404 who says, maybe you can get Dr. Allenson to carry them all out so they don't have to bother the other doctors. I don't think that's really a practical sense, is it really?
Yeah.
Before you go, Julian, because I've got a couple of other callers on, that Steve has texted in to challenge you directly. He says, Andrew Bridgen compared COVID vaccines to the Holocaust and was therefore rightly expelled from the Tory party. Not surprising Julian has chosen to promote this non-Manx story about someone spreading misinformation, as it seems to be a common theme from him. Do you want to respond to Steve on that one?
Andrew Bridgen quoted someone else. It wasn't actually him. But somebody was. I think he was booted out because he said that the Holocaust wasn't that bad. But he was actually saying that the Holocaust was very bad. So I'd hardly say that was anti-Semitic, because that was the actual primary reason for him being booted out. So, to compare to the Holocaust and say that was a very bad thing is the opposite of anti-Semitism, I would have said. I mean, I don't know. That's the logic that I see with that argument.
Okay. Thanks, Julian. Lovely to speak to you as always. Do take care. It's always good to speak to Julian, and welcome anybody on the Mannin Line. Quick look at some text before I know we've got Howard on wanting to talk about the Steam packet, but quite a few people getting in touch. Tesco will also be taking over ShopRite's warehouses, so we'll have at least twice the current storage capacity, says 753. I don't doubt that. I was questioning whether they would continue that business model. And to be honest, we don't know. Let's have a look. And Marie says, this is a comment that will not be well received, but there are too many new residents walking into government positions and wanting to change our Manx ways, and our MHKs just roll over and let them. Well, there's two sides to that, isn't there, Marie? Which is, one, do we go further afield? Because, yes, a lot of the new CEOs that have been put in place are from further afield. They've not come to the Isle of Man. They've not been brought up in the Isle of Man. They might not have an appreciation for our unique way of life here and the things that we hold dear. But do we go further afield to get expertise in that area? And then the hope is that these people coming in should be professional enough to turn around and go, actually, the people I'm serving, this is important to them, as opposed to the vision that many have of the civil service, which is that, well, this is my agenda and I'm going with it. So, two sides to that, Mary. Thank you very much to 258 who says, Alex, when Tesco's take over the ShopRite stores, are they going to keep them open or shut them? I can't see why any business would keep so many shops open when they can force people to use their main store. I also, once again, I don't have an answer for it, but I can't imagine they'd spent all that money taking over stores just to close them. And also, you do forget that Tesco's don't just sell groceries, and they're not just a grocery superstore as the one we have here in Douglas. Okay, there's lifestyle, there's electrics. Andy's mentioned this many times. So maybe that you might find some becoming an express, some becoming a macro. You don't know. Time will tell. Bonzo is on line 3. Wants to have a chat about Julian's comments, actually, on assisted dying. Hello, Bonzo. How are you?
Hello. Yes, fine. In the rain-ravaged world of Port St Mary, the sound of people throwing nuts and bolts on the roof is not actually people throwing nuts and bolts on the roof. It's because I'm in my conservatory, which is the only place where I can get a signal.
Oh, right, okay. Right, you've got some comments on you've got some comments on Julian's opinions, haven't you?
Yeah. The survey, which said that 70+% of doctors on the Isle of Man would not disapproved of assisted dying regulation and would have nothing to do with it.
Yes.
I don't think it will lead to a mass exodus of doctors from the Isle of Man. It will simply mean that doctors will not participate in assisted dying because, of course, although we could make assisted dying legal here and make it legal for medical practitioners to enable assisted dying here, it would still be against their codes of conduct, BMA and GMC, and it would be taken as a hanging offence and they'd be struck off. So they're not going to do it.
It does say on the actual survey story that more than half of the respondents felt that any changes, such as the assisted dying bill, could have a negative effect on recruitment and retention. So that does sort of speak towards Julian's point, though, that doctors wouldn't want to come here because, the Hippocratic Oath is to do no harm.
Oh, quite, yes. There's the other piece of the argument that yes, it would discourage people, perhaps, from coming to the island to join the medical profession here. But I don't think that it would, as I say, lead to a sort of mass exodus of doctors overnight if the legislation was passed.
But bigger picture then, because obviously I'm taking that you and I are lay persons, we're not in the medical profession. The medical profession has done this survey and they say it would affect recruitment and retention. So surely, bigger picture, we might not wake up in the morning and find the hospital's got no doctors. But then a few years down the line, we might be having trouble recruiting people to man our health services. And whilst, you and I can say perhaps it might not have that effect, well, the people in the medical industry say, well, we feel it will.
Well, we can say it may perhaps have that effect, but the thing is that it won't happen anyway. Because, as I say, you can pass the law as much as you like, but having people actually implement it, and if that's against their professional codes, and that would lead to them losing their profession, then they're not going to undertake it.
Okay, good point. Thanks very much, Bonzo. Always lovely to hear from you. I'm going to move on to Howard, who's been very patiently waiting, that wants to talk about Steam Packet and Royal Mail. Howard, good afternoon. Thanks for waiting there.
Good afternoon, Alex. No, just a question for anybody out in your listening audience. At one time, the Steam Packet used to fly a flag on the foremast, RMS. Well, they were known as RMS ships, Royal Mail ships, and they had a pennant flag on the foremast.
They did.
And that was the contract that they had with the Isle of Man government to carry the Royal Mail. And I think that was one of the problems with the Ellen Vannon. She was on the mail run.
Yes.
But does that flag still get flown? Do they have a contract with the Isle of Man government, who own the Steam Packet? And are they obliged to deliver the mail? Because the similar act or a similar situation used to work at the airport when Manx Airlines started up. They had little, what we used to call sheds, the 360s. And the first one back after tea, after the evening flight, would be stripped of its seats, the Royal Mail, parcels and everything be put in, and away she'd go for the night then. She'd be flying with a different crew all night, come back in the morning, everything be put back in, and she'd go back under passenger carrying. And that was a contract they had with Royal Mail here on the island. Have those contracts now been relinquished, and are they working on an ad hoc basis? But do they still, I haven't thought about it until just before then when we talked about the ship not sailing and no mail. Do they still fly the pennant, the RMS Royal Mail services on the ships here? Because if that's the case, they must still be contracted to the government.
Well, it's an interesting point there, Howard. I can't tell you from up here. My eyesight's not that good in the rain. I haven't seen the RMS, the Royal Mail steamer flag, because, of course, the whole name of the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company, it was a package company. It got the mail contract in 1832, which is when it became the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company. It was the Mona's Isle Company before then. I would imagine, in terms of bringing the mail here, there will be a commercial contract with the Post or Royal Mail being a commercial customer in the same way as Tesco or any other hauler in Manx Independent Carriers. They're all commercial customers. But I'd imagine, looking at the note that the chairman of the Steam Packet sent Timble members the other day, that if you ask them that question, they'll say that's commercially confidential, surely.
Well, would they or wouldn't they? Because it's a government-owned, and that magic word that they use these days, stakeholders, we're all part of the stakeholders, and we should have an honest answer to it. But I'm not advocating that the vessels sail in atrocious weather. But, again, it's going to get worse and worse, and the excuses have become more and more that the mail is not arriving on the island. We just had a delivery this morning, and it was with Every, and Philip, the fellow, said, well, the day after tomorrow, he said, there's nothing happening today. So they're taking it now as part and parcel. It's taken for granted. But does that contract, and is it a contract between Royal Mail and another thing, if you interfere with Royal Mail, it's an offence. But as you just mentioned, Tesco, if a trailer full of baked beans don't get here, it's an inconvenience. You know, it's a different outlook on different things. The Royal Mail is the Royal Mail, and it's obliged to be delivered.
It's especially an inconvenience if you like baked beans, Howard. It's an interesting point, isn't it? It's about in terms of the sailings, it's only going to get worse because obviously I'm sitting here above Douglas Bay. The Ben McCree is in dock. The Mannin's in dock. She's had her sailing cancelled. The Manxman, though, is trundling off at sea at the moment, somewhere off Barrow in Furness, and she's just passed the Stenner ship, which is running between Heysham and Belfast, and the Sea Truck service, which is running to Warren Point across the Irish Sea. So It does make you wonder why, is it something to do with the ports we operate in? Is it something to do with the approach? Is it something to do with the berthing restrictions? Because if we're becoming ever more reliant on this vessel that we've spent nearly 80 million on, as you say, surely that we need to know why she's okay at sea but can't go into ports.
Well, she seems to be a part-time ship because what day was today? Friday, Wednesday, she was off the west coast of the island sheltering, hiding behind the hills of Peel. And I say for a 78, 80 million pound ship, she's not doing the work that she was designed to do. And there's been no explanation why she's a part-time vessel.
Well, in fairness to the steam packets, they did say that there was going to be a crossover period between her and the Ben, wasn't there? And that's what has been operating for about the last couple of months as they get used to it.
Yeah, but one of the other things, and I don't know if it still stands, people with these heavy marine engines, they don't like to cool down. It does a lot more damage to them. So they use them possibly on a morning sail and evening sail, and it'll keep a little bit of heat in the engines. It's a technical thing, but it was the diesel engines. A diesel engine doesn't like to cool down.
Yeah.
So they keep them warm.
We have to point out, of course, the Manxman isn't a diesel engine. She's diesel electric. She's a completely different technology.
She'll have a diesel engine driving a generator.
Yes, she does, yes.
Like she's a hybrid.
Yes.
But this is the silly part about it, and it's proved now that the people write saying, why do they want to get rid of the Ben? Because we're dependent on the Ben. She's a 35-year-old...
25.
Well, she's a 25-year-old, ship. But she's been a good and faithful servant. And if we just stuck with the Arrow, we'd have nothing now coming in. We'd have no passengers or anything like that. And the Sea Cat's not going either today.
No.
So let's keep the Ben and keep sensible. But the question I asked there was, do they still fly that flag, the Royal Mail? Just out of curiosity, because the contract must be still there then.
Well, I'll tell you what, Howard, we'll see if someone can confirm it for me or deny it. So we'll put it out there. But
it's just to satisfy my own curiosity as well.
Yeah, why not?
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Howard. Thanks so much for your call. Right, we'll get to the phones and your text in a minute. Okay, it's the Mannin Line, 25 to 1, open line today. Thank you very much to Desmond, who says, the steam packet hasn't flown that flag since the mail change to planes and parcels have been coming by sea for years. Thank you for that, Des. I mentioned before about the note that the chairman of the steam packet, Lars Ugland, sent to members of Tynwald. It's a 3-page document. I'm not going to read the whole thing for you, ahead of this week's sitting, because there was a large number of questions which were pretty much answered along the lines of, arm's length company, nothing to do with us, boss. But there's lines in it that says, the Steam Packet Board have been consistently advised that it's an arm's-length company with oversight and governance, conducted through the regular attendance of Treasury observers at quarterly board meetings, attendance by Treasury Minister at biannual EGMs, adherence to the provisions of the shareholder agreement and compliance with the Sea Services Agreement. It's in its consideration of information requests from certain members of Tynwald, the board has determined to respond in a manner consistent with an arm's-length company. It has therefore declined to disclose any information which it believes is not in the best interest of the company or the shareholder. To act otherwise would be to compromise the existing government framework. Bear in mind, the Steam Packet is one of two bodies that receives government money, public money, your money, and doesn't have to answer to freedom of information requests. Okay? I say something similar, bearing in mind that I work for Radio Manx Limited, a company that is an arm's-length company, and look how much political talk is done about us. So, the question is there that Howard is raising about keeping the Ben McCree as backup. That's in the Sea Services Agreement, okay? But we know that is open for discussion at the moment because there is the talk of the Ben McCree being sold. Thank you to texter who's texted in saying, from a crew member, the Steam Packet are having problems getting engine spares due to age. That's why the Ben's been sold on. Thank you for that. Could be a bit of Manx whispers there, so I take everything like that with a massive pinch of salt, but thank you very much. Alex, never mind about how fit for purpose our Manx Tank Spares new boat is. What about the new landing stage at Liverpool? How can anyone worth what we've got argue that what we've got is worth 70 million and counting? Someone needs to show where the money went. Brexit and COVID, BS. I presume that stands for something. I'm sure you'll know what he means. Okay, let's have a look to... in the Manx Independent notices this week, Tesco's have applied to take over the alcohol licences in all 9 ShopRite stores, which suggests they'll all be staying open for the foreseeable future. Thank you to Libby in Castletown. Also... that's something about a doctor's case, so I shall read that through and check in a moment. Let's go back to the phone lines because Ken is on line 1. He's been waiting very patiently. He wants to talk about energy in the Isle of Man. Hello, Ken. Thanks for waiting.
Hello. Good afternoon. Want to talk about another Isle of Man company, Isle of Man Energy. When you thought everything was all rosy in the garden, I get an estimated bill that's 3 times as much as it should be. I looked at my meter this morning. It's nearly £100 and should be about £33. Now, just as a matter of course, I also got the boiler, so I had a service reminder and phoned up the number and spoke to somebody in the Isle of Man who kindly said, yes, we'll send an engineer first week in November at agreed time. And while I was on, I asked him, could I speak to somebody about my bill? And he said, yes, I'll just transfer you now. And then ended up speaking to somebody in Scotland.
Wow.
Where their treble 444 number is based these days.
Did they manage to actually sort out your problem in Scotland, though?
She's going to have a look at it and send me a manual bill. And I said, well, can I speak to somebody about why you're overestimating? Now, fortunately, I cancelled my direct debit 2 years ago. I'm just warning people who've got direct debits that probably, when they estimate, they're probably taking too much money out.
Well, it's interesting because there's a friend of mine who asked me the same question on the other side of the coin, that is a customer of Isle of Man Energy, formerly Manx Gas, and said that they just received a rebate on the bills that they'd been paying because they'd been overestimated. And the question is that if any company is taking too much money off you, keeps it for a while in a bank, invests it, gets the interest and everything else, and then gives it back, why was it overestimated in the first place?
Well, yes, I don't know. Their only advice was, well, if you're sending a monthly reading, you wouldn't be overestimated. I thought, yeah, so that means, because we haven't had any meter reading the meter for 2 years. Electricity board still sends somebody.
Presumably this is where the world of smart meters are, they would argue, meant to counteract this issue, aren't they? That smart meters will basically charge you for exactly what you've had.
Well, yes, I'm not into smart meters unless we had a combined gas and electric one, but that's another story.
Yes.
But I'm sure there will. So basically, you're supposed to not ring up, you can ring up, but you can send online what your gas meter reading is. Just she wouldn't commit herself. When should I send it? The end of the month, first of the month. As this bill's dated to the 19th of October, I suppose it's sort of like middle of the month you should send one in. Just a warning to other gas users that make sure you're not overpaying too much, especially if you've still got a direct debit.
Excellent stuff. Thank you, Ken. Thanks for your call. And yes, there we go. Do check your bills, check your meters, and make sure you're not overpaying, is the news from Ken there. Tony says, hi, Alex. Be good to see the prom finished, as in get on a horse tram at the sea terminal. Good point. We saw that report, didn't we, that was going to Tynwald saying that they felt... Effectively, it was anti-democratic that the Council of Ministers decided to cut short the tramway works, okay, and it didn't come to Tynwald when it had been a direct vote from Tynwald telling them to finish it. The other noticeable thing is that in a press release from the Infrastructure Minister, Tim Crookall, it said that they had a successful year with 40,000 passenger journeys on the Douglas Half Bay Horse Tramway, and in the year before they ripped up the prom, it was over 80,000 passengers on board the horse tramway when they had the full length to travel on. So, half the length of the railway, half the number of passengers, then half the number of tourists, half the number of economic benefits. You see, rationalisation, a number of experts always say that rationalisation doesn't work, and people who aren't experts just think, oh, it's fine. They'll only travel for 5 minutes instead of 10, so they'll still come and do it. The figures obviously speak the opposite. Let's have a look. More of your texts. Thanks to Pat and 223. The National Insurance Fund here is short of funds. But are you aware that the government are turning a blind eye to the main construction companies here? When companies tender for government-funded works, the criteria is in place to factor in full NI payments. But Pat says when main contractors employ majority staff as self-employed, resulting in no NI payments being paid to the employers. This results in millions per year going to the pockets of the company owners. Pat, if you have any evidence of that, we'd love to hear of it. Or is it just a Manx rumour mill and whisper that's gone? What else? Oh, the loss of the mail plane may not be a complete disaster, according to Texter 049, because the airport can now open 45 to 60 minutes later and therefore stay open later to allow the Gatwick flight more time to get in and out. Ah, the much vaunted Gatwick flight. Yes, we hear a lot about that, don't we? Right. I'm going to go through some more of your text, and we've still got another quarter of an hour. If you want to call in, please do so. 66 13 68 on any topic from Orsted wind farms. We're going to be consulted about those. The cost of caring for the elderly or those who have a disability. Do you have an opinion on that? I'd love to hear from you. 66 13 68. OK, it's coming up to 10 to 1. Still got a little more time to talk through some calls. So you can send me a text 166 177. I'll quickly go through a group of texts. Fran, why has nobody from the DOI explained the reason for spending the money that was set aside for the horse tram track spent instead on a lavish area outside the Sefton Hotel? Has the Sefton Group got a special relationship with government? In fairness, Fran, I think they did highlight that. But in terms of the money, well, yes, it does seem to be... It doesn't give a good impression of the DOI. I mean, we've got... I haven't got to it today. We might do it on Monday. This emergency demolition order on the Tramway Terrace building at the end of Douglas Promenade. It's a registered building. It's in a conservation area. It should be protected, according to the order of 2018. Yet, because it's been allowed to fall into disrepair in government and DOI ownership, they're now just wanting an emergency demolition order. And if you remember rightly, I'm sure that the people who wanted to redevelop Newsom's, the former Newsom's site on the Quay, which is a registered protected building, weren't allowed to do so because of it. So I'd imagine they would have something to say on that. It doesn't put the DOI in a good light. That's all we'll say on that one, Fran. Thank you to D for giving me stuff that's going to get me libelled, so I'm not going to read that out. Thank you, D. Evidence is what you need. Sorry, mate. Let's have a look. Hi, Alex. I often send post to New Zealand via airmail. Now no post plane. How can I be charged airmail prices? Very confusing, and now it's going to take even longer for things to arrive in New Zealand and vice versa. It's ridiculous. Hi, Alex. Andy mentioned this yesterday. Could you ask listeners if anyone has seen the 20,000 walkers who apparently visited the Isle of Man? That's a huge number to reveal. but wouldn't seem to be able to be backed up. This was off the tourism programme the other day. There is a bit of a feeling that if you look at a lot of advertising, we advertise the Isle of Man as this beautiful place to go and do outdoor pursuits, cycling and walking, yet it's cheaper to do it in the Lake District. So are we just basically providing free advertising for the Lake District and Wales and not actually marketing our own unique products here, the USP of the Isle of Man, the things that we've got that no one else has got? Because, let's be honest, if you're going to pay a steam packet fare to come over with your car to the Isle of Man, or you're going to pay a flight, or do you want to go to Wales or the Lake District and just stick a bit of petrol in your car? Thank you very much, Dave. Says that Alex, with the insurance on EVs going up by 150%, it'll only be MHKs who will be able to afford the premiums soon. Oh, thank you, Dave. Get on to your local MHK. What else? Here we go. Thank you, Sue. It says that Julian doesn't know. Julian does know that you don't just rock up to your GP and ask to be euthanised, right? It would be a thorough process with counselling, and I'd imagine there'd be a clinic with dedicated clinicians, so no GP involved. Doctors already do harm by forcing people in terrible pain or with no quality of life to stay alive. Okay, matter of opinion, I would say there, Sue. I have a relative in Amsterdam where it's legal and part of the normal healthcare to request if you're suffering. Doesn't mean that you will be eligible, no hysteria, and the sky hasn't fallen in. Julian needs to get a grip and realise he has no right to exert control over the lives of people he knows nothing about just because he doesn't like it. It won't affect him if he doesn't want the option. That's from Sue. Thank you, Sue, for your opinion there. I would obviously say that Julian isn't exerting any control. He's exercising his free right to an opinion, as are you, which is exactly what we're here for. And thank you to Texan 011 who says, why are the same three eco-warriors given so much time every day ruining the Mannin Line? Well, you know what to do. If you don't like someone else's opinion, pick up the phone and get yours in there instead. You see, we don't cut anyone off. 166 177 and Dewan. Speaking of regulars, hello, how are you?
I'm all right, Al. How are you?
I'm not so bad, sir. We're nearly at the end of the hour and I haven't, collapsed in a nervous wreck yet. So that's always good.
Oh, and you've got Monday to go yet as well.
Exactly. Something to look forward to over the weekend.
Absolutely. And I know you will be. I know. And the answer to it all, I think, Al, is carrier pigeons.
Carrier pigeons?
Royal Mail carrier pigeons. I think that's the way forward.
The only thing with that is, you see, Dewan, that, you could put the mail maybe on a carrier pigeon, but some of your big Amazon parcels, you might have a problem there, surely.
Well, I don't know. Special delivery, I'm sure there's an angle there. I'm sure there's an angle.
Yeah.
What was that the biggest cruise ship we nearly had the other day?
I'm not sure on size, to be honest. I would normally anorak it, but I haven't, so I'm not aware. But it was pretty big.
You need the anorak today, that's for sure. I thought the captain had got the binoculars out and he's seen the grass growing on the sand and the railings hanging down. He thought, no, it's a deserted island. We'd better turn around. We've got the wrong island. And he went. Do you think that was what it was?
I couldn't possibly comment, Dewan. You may very well think that.
Possibly comment.
No.
and just talking there, just a bit of housekeeping from the other day, and I was talking to Ranulph and Heather about the tourism. And, I mean, you know Charles quite well. I mean, what do you think his take is at the moment on how things are going, Alex? I was talking about window dressing the other day, and it's all right promoting the island, but when they get here, we're not dressed enough. And back to the promenade scenario that we were talking about before.
Well, I wouldn't be in any place to speak for Charles. That's up to him. Although I think if you've watched his 2 videos on YouTube, he makes his points rather clear. Although, have to say, credit where credit's due. I gave a kick to the DOI a minute ago, but on the other side of the coin, there are new railings around on Marine Drive, which look very smart. There's beautiful new railings around the Groudle Viaduct that have been installed to replace all the rusty ones there. So maybe these things are happening. They just take time, and I'm waiting for the Welcome to the Isle of Man sign that's peeling off the side of the steam packet building to get replaced next.
Well, there we go. There's something to look forward to. It won't be Monday, will it?
No, definitely not. But I'd imagine that, if you listen to this programme regularly, people generally do seem to have a view that we look tired, yes.
Yeah, and I was saying the other day there, we've got a boat now which is, twice the size in capacity with the Ben McCree, is it? No, it holds about 900 now, this, does it?
Yeah, not far, about another third the size, yeah.
Yeah, and generally, I mean, the money the steam packet make has always been known to be on the car deck. So, and my point was, if you got on the dead sailings at night time, and you've done special events here at the weekends, got the Villa Marina or the Gaiety Theatre up and running with special events, the pound per head spend if you got people over here on a £25 return ticket, there wouldn't be a fee to actually spending on board. On food and souvenirs, and then they'd spend here for the 2 or 3 days they were here. And to kickstart the economy again, maybe get some special events with a ticket included, get the theatre working, get the Villa Marina running every week, and getting the thing kickstarted to get people here for some kind of events.
You'd have made a marvellous Victorian, June.
Born in the wrong era.
Do you feel then that the part of the problem is, because what they'll turn around and say is that effectively, a friend of mine used to say that the problem is accountants are running the show, and people who are bean counters as opposed to people who have a vision. And that the steam packet, looking at the last accounts, circa their income, this isn't exact, but circa the income was about 70 million. There was a profit of circa around 14 million, and they didn't pay a dividend to the shareholder, according to the accounts and what I can see. I'm willing to be proved wrong. So that 14 million goes back in the coffers into the company. So surely they're trying to keep up that profit margin, and they'll turn around and say that £25 coming over. No, it's not going to keep up our profit margins.
But the profit, like I've just said, the profit is actually made on the car deck, so that's not going to affect that. I mean, If you've got a 900 seat ship and there's 60 people want to go on a nighttime sailing, then surely, the boat's running anyway. So if all of a sudden you're there, £25, you've got to come over on the 2 o'clock sailing to get that. You join up with a hotel that can give someone an early check-in. They have a ticket for a show, and surely, if you're spending £25 return on the boat, that's extra income from the steam packet. It would be an empty sailing anyway, and people would then, I'm going to spend £10 on a meal. I'm going to buy a Manx T-shirt because they feel like they're not getting ripped off, and that seems to be the issue here: is the cost of getting here. And the way things are going now, there's going to be, less air traffic. So I think, get the boat up and running. I can hear the music playing. I'm going to get cut off.
It's a subtle hint, Ewan. I'll probably speak to you again on Monday for whatever else you wanted to carry on with, okay? Thanks very much.
Well, see you later.
Thank you very much, Ewan. There we go, you see. Maybe, that board that Visit Isle of Man were talking about the other day, you should get Ewan on that board. That would be interesting. Thank you very much for your company this afternoon. Lovely to chat to you on the phone lines. If you were thinking of getting on the phone today and didn't quite pluck up the courage, do it on Monday. I don't bite, I promise. Thank you for all your texts as well. For the ones that I did manage to read out and the ones I didn't, they are all read and they'll be passed on to our newsroom, or we might deal with them on Monday's show. Beth Espy is up next with 1 to 3, elfing around for a couple of hours. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll speak to you on Monday at midday. Until then, take care. Ta-da.